Which cartoon character had the best character development and why? Currently rewatching Lilo and Stitch and I wanna toss in Stitch. Sure, he became more of a mascot to sell toys. But the movie does a great job showcasing his change from a being solely bent on destruction to am essential part of Lilo and Nanny's family. Edit. God damn it, just got to the part where he realizes that he is the cause of the destruction of Lilo and Nanny's family and he leaves. Son of a bitch, why am I more sentimental now than when I was a child? Lilo and Stitch is one of my and my sister's favorite movies. That opening song, Himeli no Lilo, gets me going every time I hear it. There's something about sibling love and rivalry throughout this entire film that seemed to bond us. Growing up we were very different kids and a nasty divorce made it even more difficult for us to be kids together. But watching that destructive blue menace be embraced by love despite his many issues was so heartwarming. Love brought out the love from within him. I sometimes feel like that movie was one of those warm love moments that kept my sister and I together. It gave us a common ground and a place to sit next to each other and be lost in a cartoon world for a few hours. All the characters from As Told by Ginger. They probably had the most realistic growth scene in a kid's cartoon. Plus they changed clothes daily and sometimes repeated parts of outfits. Which was a nice touch. One of my favorite cartoons from childhood. I watched it again a few years ago and it holds up really well. Edit. I'm a little seal girl. Living in the real world. And it's so hard to get by. 'Cause seals can't even cry. Their mouths still freak me out. But it's a solid show. Over the Garden Wall had so many amazing character developments. And lots of twists and turns. Over the Garden Wall is a goddamn classic that deserves way more acclaim and popularity. Also, Potatoes and Molasses will always be an absolute banger of a song. I respect your opinion, but I think the biggest banger of the show is I'm the Highwayman. And I make ends meet. Raven from Teen Titans. She grew up thinking that destiny was an unchangeable reality. Succumbing to the threats of her father. And living a life full of anxiety and isolation because of her fears. Before dying, she had the hope that she was wrong about everything and gave each of her friends a portion of her soul to survive the brought forth apocalypse, granting them the chance they needed to survive and fight a bit longer. After all was said and done, and after it had cost her her very own life, she finally understood that her destiny was what she chose for it to be and not what others told her it was. Though she failed the first time, she was given a second chance to change it all and took it. Having grown from that experience, she came back stronger, more balanced, and more trusting in those who loved her, chose who truly was her family, and ended up saving her world from her father. Truly a great metaphor for life's choices, free will, and the dooming feeling of a predestined life. A great arc for a great character. Edit. For those asking, Raven sacrifices herself in the first episode of the 3-part finale to season 4 called The End. Last year on my birthday, my friends got me a cake and some balloons. But I couldn't enjoy it because my dad Trigon, this scary red demon with horns, took over the world. And there was fire everywhere. And then this ugly guy Slade, who had a skeleton for a face, came after me and cut to children looking horrified. My friends saved me and we all had cake. The end. Proceeds to give the most damn heartwarming smile. I feel like Hank Hill really grew throughout the series. It's really a show about the father-son relationship. And you get to see how his relationship with Cotton affected him. He doesn't full understand Bobby. But I think his motivation in trying to comes from not wanting to be like Cotton. I always liked how Bobby turned out to be good at identifying meat and was good at grilling, and it made a bond between him and Hank despite all of their differences. Bobby was also one hell of a shot with the rifle. My favorite part of that episode is Hank getting sad they lost and Bobby runs up to him all excited they won second place. Really heartwarming. Bobby is absolutely precious. When Peggy is sad about her big feet, Bobby says he understands cause he's fat. But he's also funny. Has a great personality. Friends. A girlfriend. All to try to encourage his mom. He's just so freaking adorable. Such a good kid. And it was hysterical when absolutely nothing bothered him at Cotton's military school. He was like Met. Big points for driving Cotton nuts. Megamind. Poor guy had such an unfortunate start. Even then it became a blessing in disguise. Minion. Loved the way he became a hero in the end. I would pay good money to have a guy like Minion around. $30 a day and I'll wear a fishbowl on my head. Surprisingly affordable. Both Woody and Buzz from Toy Story. Especially the first one. Woody goes from being Andy's favorite to playing second fiddle early on. And has a really big shock to his system. Then he goes on a redemption arc where he gets rid of his jealousy. Buzz goes from believing he's the real Buzz Lightyear to having reality crash down on him. And then overcomes his depression when he finds his new purpose, to bring kids joy. I hate how they portrayed Buzz in TS4. A complete moron and clueless. Come on Pixar. He wasn't that dense. Edit for those who disagree, compare the Buzz that leads toys in Woody's rescue in Toy Story 2. Compared to TS4. Buzz made no effort until the very last scene to lead. The movie was fine I guess, but there was something off about the whole thing. I felt like on paper I was supposed to enjoy it, but I don't know. There was something missing. I still enjoyed TS4. But I agree. It just kind of felt like fan fiction. Characters were a little off. The humor wasn't quite the same. And TS3 was such a great send-off that it felt pretty unnecessary. Especially since it ends up being another send-off. The end of Toy Story 3 was absolutely perfect. I didn't mind TS4, but it was a different thing altogether from the first three. The Elric brothers from Full Metal Alchemist. Edit, spelling. It's been a while since watching IT. I have watched both FMA and FMAB, both good in their own way. But Brotherhood followed much closer to the source material. So many characters from that show could be there, but I think Colonel Roy Mustang's arc is the most interesting development, with Hohenheim right behind. FMA was my introduction to anime. Nothing has really compared since. Even Scar, the most prominent protagonist, has an interesting and relevant story arc. He develops his character and motivations and you can empathize. With the bad guy . You are correct. There are not many bad character developments in the entire series. I recently got my brother into FMA and I'm kind of feeling bad because he's trying to watch other animes now and nothing is living up to it. Great call on Scar. I don't know how I could forget. His development might actually be the best. He's truly the Zuko or Vegeta of FMA. I really love Simba. Goes from a spoiled kid to wanting to be brave to impress his dad, to experiencing unbelievable trauma and guilt, to repressing it all as a carefree young adult, to finally accepting his destiny as king. But even when he goes back to fight Scar, he isn't willing to really break free of his guilt until Scar reveals that he killed Mufasa. Simba, aka Hamlet. Edit, I didn't realize this comment would be so controversial. But just to add on to my original comment, the creators actually did confirm that it was based partly on Hamlet in the 1994 special edition DVD release of the film. They also said it was partially inspired by the biblical stories of Joseph and Moses. That being said, stories are based on other stories all the time, and I don't necessarily think that detracts from The Lion King in any way. Flynn Rider in Tangled. You mean Eugene Fitzherbert? I love how he continues to go by Eugene in the animated series and acts uncomfortable when people shove him back into the Flynn Rider role. There's an animated series. 2 seasons on Disney+. With the third on the way, it's a lot of fun and it explores the lore of the world and Rapunzel's magic in really interesting ways. The new characters they introduce fit really well into the story. Plus, Zachary Levi and Mandy Moore return as Eugene and Rapunzel. Kazuko from Emperor's New Groove. Spoiled brat with everything. To spoiled brat with nothing. To less spoiled brat learning about teamwork. To fairly normal person. To getting everything back but not being spoiled anymore. But rather respectable. That scene where he saved Pasha's life and was celebrating was a true turning point. He realized he could get a great feeling by doing good rather than just fulfilling his own desires. Also a good lesson for the target audience. Edit, spelling. Nobody's that heartless. / wipes the dust from my eyes / A perfect world begins and ends with us. Eva from WALL-E. Damn, when she tried to wake up dead WALL-E broke my heart. WALL-E has to be one of my favorite movies. I swear I cry every time she tries to wake up WALL-E, and then when she holds his hand and sings because she finally realizes that's the only thing he wanted from her all along. I fucking sobbed at that point in the movie. My husband had never seen a movie make me cry before and he was like, "Really? Robots are what do it?" Jokes on him because that just unleashed my emotions and now I cry at everything sappy lol. Diane Nguyen from BoJack Horseman. I like how she came to terms with herself despite starting out with a false sense of self. Sometimes life's a bitch. And then you keep on living. I feel like that's the whole show right there. It works so well with Bohack's preceding line, Bohack, life's a bitch and then you die. Right, Diane, sometimes. Sometimes life's a bitch and then you keep living. Yeah, I'm really glad they didn't end the series with Bohack's death. This is a much better message. All these characters have grown a lot through the series. And we see how their lives have been a bitch. Then the writers really connected to real life. Because life isn't a bitch forever. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it isn't. We only see the part of Bohack's and Diane's and Todd's and Mr. P's and PC's lives that are a bitch. Then they keep living. Pacifica Northwest from Gravity Falls started off as a snobby rich girl before mellowing R and almost stopping the apocalypse. Probably one of many reasons why Northwest Mystery Manor is one of my favorite episodes. Grunkle Stan from Gravity Falls. That whole show had great characters but Stan had the most interesting ups and downs. Stan Pines grows more and more complex as the series goes on without ever once changing from his core gruff lovability. What an excellent man. He's old school AF. Love him and still watch that show with my wife and daughter. My 4-year-old son watched the first episode with me once and was hooked. He loved when Shmbulak puked rainbows. Shmbulak. Ice King from Adventure Time. Character development doesn't have to be for the best. Ice King is a perfect example of seeing a character slowly descend into madness. There are so many clues that hint about why he is how he is. What got me is his obsession with princesses. He called his fiancée Princess. He must have loved her so much that the pet name stayed with him even after the memory of her had clouded over. I'm not crying. You're crying. Loudly crying face, loudly crying face, loudly crying face. Pops from Regular Show. He seems like an old goofball. But, spoiler for show that ended years ago, he ends up giving his life to save the universe. I think Rigby character development was the best one on that show. Yeah. Pops is great but Rigby is the one who truly grows as a person in so many ways. Muscleman is on the same boat here. Putting all pranks aside. He grew as a person too. Skip's coming to terms with his immortality always struck a chord with me. All those characters were / are great in their own right. Vegeta. He went from a villain to reluctant hero / rival to Goku to husband and father. Then he had his redemption in the Buu saga. Vegeta met a woman who wouldn't take his bullshit. He didn't know how to handle that. So he married her.